Amazing discovery, how a black waitress's unexpected kindness transformed a billionaire's hopeless life. Rain drizzled against the worn awning of Betty's diner, casting an unfriendly facade on the beloved establishment. Inside, the atmosphere hummed with voices sharing laughter and sorrow over steaming cups of coffee and cherry pie. Lisa, a 32-year-old waitress, orchestrated the chaos with an ease born from years of familiarity. Her smile was an emblem of perseverance, but today it felt heavy, the weight of unrelenting bills and dwindling customers gnawing at the edges of her resolve. She lived in survival mode, an anchor for her community, yet the burden sometimes felt suffocating. Each interaction was a flicker of hope, yet it was becoming hard to hold on to light. Then James walked in. A tall figure draped in an expensive gray overcoat, but today, he exuded none of his usual confidence. The billionaire was a ghost of his former self, burdened by a history marred with failed ventures that echoed in his mind a cacophony of regrets. When he selected the corner booth, Lisa couldn't ignore how he radiated detachment from the bustling world around him. Despite being a multimillionaire, James seemed to retreat into an invisible shield, isolating himself from the very warmth that had been a hallmark of Betty's. As Lisa approached, the weight of vague curiosity tugged at James's heart. "Good morning. Can I get you something to drink?" Her voice was a soothing balm against the chill of his cynicism. The sincerity in her eyes startled him, they held an unfiltered kindness he hadn't witnessed in years. Perhaps here, in a diner filled with the scent of frying bacon, there lay a quiet remedy to his loneliness. With each passing day, their conversations unfolded like a dance. Lisa's anecdotes about her family's struggles and the gritty ways she supported them weaving into James's guarded tales of ambition and hardship. Yet while Lisa thrived in human connection, James felt as if he were merely observing, wrestling with fears that buzzed in his mind like angry bees. Suddenly, the uncertainty of his billionaire status felt like a curse rather than a blessing. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Then came the news that shattered Lisa's world. The diner that cradled her life was on the brink of closure. A corporate chain, soulless and merciless, loomed on the horizon, ready to snatch away her haven, her family. For James, the information struck a match, igniting his internal turmoil. Should he risk his wealth, his reputation, to shield a place he had come to care about, a place where laughter filled the air, echoing Lisa's unwavering spirit? The lines blurred between his isolation and the need to connect, but doubt clawed at him furiously. What would it mean for him to stand up against a faceless corporate machine when all his life he had been part of that very system? As he stared out at the rain-soaked streets, dread settled heavily in his stomach. Could he bridge the chasm between their worlds? The clock ticked mercilessly, counting down to a fate he could not bear to witness. The stakes whispered insidiously in his ear, this wasn't just a diner, it was life, laughter, and hope. Yet, uncertainty paralyzed him. Standing at the crossroads of his fortune and complexity, he battled with his urge to act and the fear of failure. What choice would he make? James sat in his booth, discomfort squirming in his chest like a restless child. Lisa was bustling around, completely unaware of the internal battle raging within him. He had come to depend on her vibrant stories and contagious laughter, but now that tether felt like a fraying rope. He could hardly listen as she animatedly speculated about new pie recipes, her eyes sparkling with the kind of passion he hadn't felt in years. That he was tempted to revel in this newfound human connection, but the bleak truth of the diner's fate clawed at him relentlessly. How did he arrive at this moment, where the well-being of a humble diner weighed on his shoulders, when he could have chosen to remain insulated in his world of wealth and power? An internal crossroads loomed. Was he prepared to risk everything for something that only a few months ago he would have considered insignificant? As the rain continued its rhythmic assault outside, James noticed Lisa pausing momentarily at a table of local regulars, a soft smile blooming on her lips. It was subtle, but he caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes, a question as deep as the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The thought drove him further into his internal spiral. Could he offer her hope and assurance, or would he just prove another person who failed her, adding to an ever-growing list of disappointments? Feeling the urgency creep in, James decided it was time to act. He flipped his phone open and scrolled through contacts. Should he focus on synergy and garner a team to save the diner? Or perhaps he could quietly pour in funds to extend its lease long enough for Lisa to naturally draw in more customers. Either way, something had to change, and the monument of his isolation had to be dismantled. "Can I join you?" he asked suddenly, the words spilling out before he had even processed them. The surprise on Lisa's face was palpable. She hesitated, then nodded cautiously, setting her notepad down. "Sure, what's up?" "You seem different today," she said, eyes narrowing with concern. James swallowed hard, grappling for the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about this diner, about what it means. I want to help, Lisa. I really do." Her brow furrowed further. "Help? How exactly? You don't even really know us." Though her emphasis on us hinted at a deeper connection she wasn't certain about yet. "I've spent too long in my bubble, detached from what truly matters. I want to show you that there is hope, that there are people who care." "People?" she questioned. "Like you, a billionaire, really caring about a diner?" James felt a mix of frustration and embarrassment rush through him. He was accustomed to being powerful, yet here he was, vulnerable and questioning his own values. This wasn't just a transaction, it was a lifeline, an opportunity to connect with the world outside his gilded cage. "You and the others, you're not just faces in a crowd. You live and breathe community, and I can't ignore it any longer," he declared, his tone steadying as he found conviction within. Lisa regarded him, an array of emotions surfacing. Skepticism, gratitude, and something warmer flickering to life in her gaze. "And what's in it for you?" she pressed, challenging him. She was right to question him. How could he explain the awakening that had begun to burgeon within him? "I still don't know," he admitted, his voice softening. "But I do know that I can't sit idle while something beautiful is on the brink of disappearing. I want to change that, to make it right." Silence hung thickly between them, an unspoken acknowledgement bridging their disparate lives. Suddenly, James felt something shift within himself, an ember of purpose flaring to life amidst shadows of self-doubt, but as Lisa reached for the stirrer on the table, hesitation crept back into the moment. Could he truly act? Could he change not only the fate of the diner but his own place in the world? The thought echoed. How far was he willing to go for this unexpected connection, as a decision loomed close, one that had the potential to alter their worlds irreversibly? His phone buzzed again, pulling him momentarily from his thoughts. A message flashed across the screen, a reminder of his corporate life, beckoning him back to the realm of safety, but it felt less like home now. The ringing of the bell above the diner door jolted James, breaking the moment. He turned just in time to see a group of suited corporate representatives walk in, their presence like a dark cloud looming over the cozy atmosphere they had shared. For Lisa, everything had shifted, the stakes had suddenly risen. "What are you going to do, James?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The time had come to face the facade he decreated. Would he step away from the past and embrace the unknown? His answer wasn't merely a whisper, it was a call to action. James felt the weight of Lisa's question heavy in the air as the corporate representatives filed in, their sharp suits and confident demeanor a stark contrast to the warm familiarity of the diner. Each click of a briefcase being unlatched sent a shiver down his spine, a foreboding reminder of the world he had begun to question. As tension thickened like fog, Lisa's attentive gaze anchored him. This was no longer about mere financial leverage, it was about humanity clashing with the coldness of profit margins. Would he allow this opportunity for connection to slip away as he retreated into his old life, or could he redefine who he was both in front of her and for himself? "James." Lisa's voice broke through the noise of his racing thoughts. "I." His voice faltered, he was struggling to articulate a path forward. He needed a plan, a tangible way to counter the looming threat represented by the corporate group. Emboldened by the intensity of the moment, he decided to stand, accidentally knocking over his coffee. The liquid stained the table, creating an unforeseen chaos in the delicate order of the diner. Without missing a beat, Lisa reached for a nearby towel, demonstrating her ease in handling the unexpected. Watching her for a moment, something within James sparked. I want to organize a community event. Something that showcases this diner, the people it serves. It could attract new customers, maybe draw attention that helps us push back against them. The idea ignited an immediate flicker of excitement in her eyes, which quickly darkened with doubt. Events? With what resources? They didn't help the last time we tried something similar. James could sense her hesitance, yet her eyes glinted with curiosity. The question weighed heavily on both of them: did he have what it took to lead, to pull not just Lisa but the entire diner community into a space exhibiting resilience? What if we used this opportunity? I can fund it. The diner needs a fresh narrative. And send out flyers? She challenged, folding her arms. You think it's that simple? No, he said, his resolve deepening. I think it will take more than simple. It's a chance to show that even in adversity, there's still life to celebrate. We could have local talent, pie contests, sharing stories that permeate this place's spirit. Her expression softened, and he could see his enthusiasm managing to chip away at her skepticism. But this is dangerous, James. What will they think? What if they think we're a joke? Let them think what they want, he replied, surprised at the steady confidence in his voice. What matters more is what we create here, in this diner. I see how you connect with the customers. You bring them together. Lisa was silent for a moment, measuring his words, weighing her own doubts against this influx of hope. There was a flicker of something. Was it determination? The notion of an event felt radical yet nightmarishly necessary. Okay, but I'll need your commitment for this. Not just money. I want you to actually be present, to engage, not just throw dollars at it. I can do that, he affirmed, finding clarity in her challenge. This diner, this community, it's more than just a philanthropic endeavor, it's a part of who I need to become. As they discussed details, the representatives in their suits glanced around, uninterested but clearly attentive, their corporate demeanor contrasted sharply against the vitality of the potential event. It wasn't merely about resisting them, it was about embracing something deeply human, which James realized he had long since forgotten, but even as he envisioned the vibrant bustle the diner could become through the event, a nagging doubt curled inside him. Could a billionaire really connect with the community? Would Lisa and those like her see his efforts as genuine, or merely self-serving? At that moment, she placed a hand on his arm, grounding him. This is a risk, James. If you're really committed, it won't just be about throwing money at a problem. It will change both of us. A leap into the unknown. Personal introspection swirled around him once more. Then let us take the leap together. But in his marrow, James felt the clawing uncertainty. It was an invitation to risk his image, his comfort, perhaps even his wealth, not just for the diner's sake, but for his own redemption. Then the doors swung open again, and a familiar face entered, one from his past corporate life, a face James hoped had stayed comfortably distant. It was the perfect storm unfolding before him, a critical turning point, personal stakes at an all-time high. James. The figure called out, and with one name, the tension escalated. Would James remain anchored in his conviction, or would he be pulled back into the tides of his old life? The time had indeed come to confront not only the corporate forces but the very fabric of who he was becoming. As their eyes locked, James knew, some decisions can shift the entire trajectory of life. Today wasn't just about the diner, it was about reclaiming his purpose. James's heart raced as he faced the familiar figure approaching with a sly grin. Mark, his former colleague from the corporate world. The tension was palpable, thickening in the air like smoke. Every instinct screamed at him to hide, to retreat back into the shadows of his former life, yet he felt the weight of Lisa's expectations bearing down on him. This was not the moment to crumble. "Long time no see, James." Mark's voice was smooth, oozing with insincere charm. "I heard you were back in town. Giving up the big career for a little diner, huh?" The air in the diner shifted, the vibrant discussions and laughter momentarily stifled. All eyes turned toward him, and James's palms began to sweat. The contrast between his past polished self and the man he was now felt stark. "I've been focusing on what truly matters," James replied, deliberately keeping his tone steady. He could feel Lisa's gaze on him, encouraging and assessing, like a lifeline that tethered him to his commitment. Mark chuckled, the sound dripping condescension. "Sure, if you say so. But come on, what's the plan? Turning this place into some kind of community hub?" He waved his hands dismissively, feigning disbelief. "Sounds a bit sentimental, don't you think?" Each dismissive jab that Mark threw pierced at James's growing resolve. Underneath the bravado, he felt embers of doubt igniting anew. There it was, the fear that had haunted him, the whisper that warned he wasn't worthy of being this person, that he'd be exposed as a fraud, a billionaire playing at being the common man. "I believe people here have stories worth sharing, Mark. It's about connection. Not everything needs to revolve around profit." James's voice was firmer than he expected, rising above the din of doubt echoing in his mind. Mark raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "And what do you expect? To make a difference overnight? These things take time and capital, which you seem to be missing now. Are you really ready to invest your reputation on something so frivolous?" The challenge hung between them, oppressive. The past tugged at him. Flashes of board meetings, stock presentations, and swirling business deals came flooding back. The seductive love affair he had with the corporate ladder was intoxicating. But in that instant, as Mark stood in front of him, James felt something stronger, a sense of duty, not just to Lisa, but to himself. "I'm not afraid of taking risks, Mark," James said, every syllable crafted, each word a step toward reclaiming identity. "I've done the whole business thing. I'm trying to build something real here with people who matter." As he met Lisa's gaze, he saw reflection and hope burning bright in her eyes. He realized then that this wasn't merely a matter of opposing Mark, it was about standing firmly in his newfound resolve. Could he redefine success to include human connection over currency? Mark's smirk faded slightly, and in that moment, James sensed an opening, an opportunity not just to fight back against an old adversary but to reclaim the narrative of his life from the grip of doubt. "Are you really going to buy into this?" "It's a stretch," Mark pressed, looking for weakness. "Not a stretch in investment," James countered. His feet felt more grounded now, resolve settled around him like armor. He would not let Mark shape his story any longer. "Let us see if you can pull it off then," Mark taunted, drawing on the familiar adversarial energy that was once so comfortable. But this time was different. James wasn't the same man who would curl under pressure. "I'll show you," James said, the conviction swelling in his chest. An odd thrill coursed through him, a blend of fear and newfound purpose. He was ready to face this challenge head-on, to prove not just to Mark but to himself that he was serious about making this work. As Mark turned to leave, the other patrons seemed to exhale collectively, perhaps sensing the shift in his demeanor. Lisa smiled, a flicker of pride dancing in her eyes. Her trust propelled him, and with it came a deeper understanding of the stakes. This was more than just a diner, it was his chance to redefine himself. But doubt whispered again, gnawing at his resolve. What if more than just the corporate world stood in his way? What if he was mistaken about the depth of his connection to this community, about his ability to transform it? "James," Lisa said softly, interrupting his spiraling thoughts. "You just took a huge step." "Yeah," he replied, now catching his breath, but internally, a storm brewed. As empowering as this moment felt, it marked an undeniable shift from the stability of his past toward the perilous unknown. The stakes had never been so high. Would forging ahead uncover his potential, or would it unravel into a chaotic misadventure in his journey to authenticity? With those questions looming, James stepped fully into his new commitment. If he was to navigate this path of transformation, confronting the doubts within and outside himself was unavoidable. Determined, he returned his focus to Lisa and the diner, ready to take the next step. But as the door swung shut behind Mark, an eerie silence settled again, hinting that their confrontation was just an opening verse in a much larger narrative yet unfolding. The diner's comforting hum wrapped around James like a warm blanket as he turned back to the counter. It felt strange, yet exhilarating. Each surface bore the remnants of untold stories waiting to be discovered, not only from the regulars but from James himself. Could he transform these narratives and redefine himself through them? Doubt coiled tighter in his stomach, whispering about all the missed opportunities, the expectations he failed to meet, and the hollow industry praise. With the patrons' murmurs rising again, James felt a magnetic pull toward the heart of the diner, the kitchen. It had taken a leap of faith to leave the stability of his old life behind, but now he felt eagerness to immerse himself fully into this new environment, to inhale its everyday rhythm. Walking through the swinging doors, he was greeted with a clash of sizzling sounds and fragrant aromas. Lisa stood by the stove, her movements smooth and deliberate, echoing a dance he wanted to learn. Their eyes met, and she offered him a fleeting, encouraging smile that made his pulse quicken. It was clear she was more than just an anchor for him, she was the embodiment of the sincerity he craved. "Want to give it a go?" she asked, nodding toward the grill. James paused, his mind briefly flaring with vivid images of boardrooms and financial analyses, spreadsheets laid across polished mahogany. He wasn't an expert in this world, yet, the innate desire to connect with the process ignited something within him. "Yeah, let us do it," he said, surprising himself with the readiness in his voice. He stepped closer, and together they began preparing the next wave of lunchtime orders. It felt different than preparing deals or executing company strategies. This was immediate, tactile, and even imperfect. He could already sense the rhythm forming between them as they chopped vegetables and seasoned meats. As they worked side by side, Lisa began sharing stories of the regular customers, their quirks, and histories as if unveiling layers of the community James had yet to comprehend. Each tale struck a chord deep within him, lighting up new navigational pathways in his understanding of connection. This wasn't merely a mundane task, it was his opportunity to step into another's shoes, to understand another life, yet, with every story, the creeping shadow of Mark's taunts loomed ever larger. Was he merely an intruder in this close-knit world? The thought gnawed at him. What if he couldn't relate to them as they did to each other? Would they see through his facade and remind him of the giant disconnect between their lives? "James, you okay?" Lisa's voice sliced through his doubts like a summer breeze. "Yeah, just trying to wrap my head around all this," he admitted, gesturing around the bustling kitchen. "It's a lot different from what I'm used to." "There's more to life than boardrooms and profits," she explained, her focus still on the grill despite the weight of her words. "Sometimes we forget to listen to the people around us. They've got stories too, stories that make us feel alive." His heart raced. Those words, so simple yet profound, echoed sharply against the cacophony of his past. Could transformation hinge on such basic human truths? As the lunch crowd surged, James found himself leaning into this new reality with surprising enjoyment. He began to anticipate the regulars' requests, remember their names, share laughter while plates were filled, little nuances that forged connections. In those moments, he unearthed something unexpected, the realization that building relationships was a skill he possessed, one honed yet dulled by years spent in isolation behind the corporate facade. Perhaps Mark was right about one thing, it would take time, but this was his journey now. Could he truly immerse himself and rise, learning not just from the diner but from the people who frequented it? As lunchtime wound down, weariness mixed with exhilaration flooded his being. The remnants of doubt still lingered, twisting alongside hope. Yet, he believed now that he was on a path. And then, a voice from behind startled him. It was a young woman he hadn't noticed before, a waitress named Mia, wiping her hands on her apron and grinning wide. "You've got potential, James. If you can chop like that, maybe you're ready for more." Her straightforwardness sparked curiosity and dread. What more could she be hinting at? Suddenly, the diner felt larger, and its walls whispered what if this journey had only begun. Would he find the courage to explore new heights of development, taking on challenges within the community that would push him beyond his self-imposed limitations? As the rest of the day unfolded, a new question emerged: how far was he willing to go to embrace this transformative adventure? James's journey had only just begun. His next step lingered at the precipice, waiting for him to decide. What would it demand of him? As the diner's fluorescent lights flickered overhead, James felt a sudden weight drop onto his shoulders. Mia's words echoed in a way that unsettled him. Ready for more. What did that even mean? The kitchen exuded a rhythm he had barely begun to understand. Beyond the sensorial explosion, there lingered an invisible divide, a tension that he couldn't quite articulate. He wiped his hands on the apron Lisa had lent him, its fabric still carrying the scent of grease and neon dreams. Did he have the faintest inkling of what potential Mia was talking about? Without delving into the past, survival here felt pressing. Yet a spark flickered within him, urging exploration. More. Like what? James managed to ask, masking his unease as best as he could. Mia leaned against the counter, her posture loose yet confident. I won't spoil the surprise. But we could use someone with creativity in the kitchen. You know, spin things around a bit. Her smile dropped, gesturing toward the bleak wall peppered with old menu ideas pinned haphazardly. Nights can be quiet. We need something fresh to keep the buzz alive. Creativity. That tied back to a part of James he barely recognized anymore. Once, in another life, he commanded a room with innovative pitches. He folded numbers into compelling narratives, a skill that had propelled him upward, but here a flicker of doubt roared. What if I fail? The thought burrowed deep, an all too familiar demon. Then we learn together. That's what we do, Mia replied, unfazed. Her unwavering confidence caused something in him to stir, an echo of belief challenging his self-sabotage. Was there still room for innovation amidst sizzling pans? Could he walk the uncertain line between creativity and the stark practicalities of diner life? James's mind darted between choices, weighing the risk against the prospect of inviting fresh life into his stagnant routines. All right, he said finally, surprising even himself. Let us shake things up. As evening rolled around, he found himself standing before the small blackboard tucked away in a corner, a canvas waiting for inspiration. Nerves fizzled as he stared blankly at the chalk, his hands felt disconnected. For years, he had navigated the predicaments of investment deals where profitability ruled supreme. But this was different. It required vulnerability. Brainstorming the possibilities felt like laboring under an unseen pressure, the strength of expectation diluted in his head. It's just food, he muttered under his breath, trying to ground himself. Yet, each potential menu item flickered before him like faces in a crowd. Would this bear the weight of his past failures, or could it lift him? Hey, Lisa's voice rang out, softly anchoring him. What are you thinking? He turned, yielding to her genuine interest which seemed to frame the moment. I want to create something special. Something that ties into the stories we share. Eyes widening, Lisa nodded slowly. That's it. Think of the regulars. What do they love? What speaks to their stories? He felt more alive now, the pressure swirling around him shifting to a buoyant energy. As he scribbled down words, he envisioned Sally's love for spicy food or Mr. Thompson's affection for a classic cheeseburger. Something clicked inside him, as if discoveries were unearthing, skin tearing away from an old self. Each idea blossomed with vibrancy, revealing a kaleidoscope of tastes ready to marry with culture and personal narrative. This was no longer just food, it had the potential to embody connection stories transformed into culinary delights, but as the ideas flowed, another thought clawed at the back of his mind. What if the community didn't accept him? What if they resented his interference in their traditions? Fear wrapped around him tightly, an attempt to stifle his burgeoning creativity. James, you're overthinking it, Mia interjected softly, her voice shedding some of the tension. Growth is about embracing the chaos of trying and changing. He absorbed her words, tracing the contours of his burgeoning resolve. Maybe he could craft something meaningful that reflected his own journey, a connection growing from the embers of self-doubt. With increased determination, he pressed the chalk onto the blackboard, watching as it exploded with color-like possibilities before him. Yet just then, a familiar face moved through the kitchen door. Mark, his former colleague, casually leaning against the threshold, an amused expression plastered across his face. Interesting choice, James. Didn't he know you had it in you to go from fat cat to chef? What's next? A memoir about your culinary awakenings? The playful jibe cut deeper than intended, reopening old wounds. Undoubtedly, Mark had returned to observe his decline into obscurity, and now it became a test of character, standing at the edge of a lifelong pattern of proving himself to someone who had long underestimated him. James's pulse quickened. Would he cower, retreating into the shadows of his self-doubt, or would this moment offer the catalyst for true transformation? Faced with this sudden confrontation, the diner's hum faded, and it became clear, this was just the beginning of his metamorphosis. Would he dare to emerge as something distantly extraordinary, far beyond what Mark could understand? In that heartbeat, a decision crystallized. Whatever lay ahead required him to cast aside the shackles of his past, transforming adversity into a canvas for his very own future. Determined, he prepared to embrace the divergence. The unexpected door of potential swayed delicately before him, tempting him to enter. What awaited him beyond that threshold? James felt the weight of Mark's scrutiny as he barely managed to keep his cool. The laughter surrounding them seemed to tighten around his throat, and he swallowed hard. This was more than just a passing comment, it reeked of judgment. Deep inside, he battled the urge to shout back and lash out against the resistance that had plagued him for so long, yet he knew that to do so would only confirm every stereotype Mark held. Taking a deep breath, James focused instead on what had just shifted inside him, a glimmer of determination, however fragile. You know, Mark, it's interesting you think so little of me, he said, maintaining a steady tone. You might be surprised how much a person can change when they open their eyes to the possibilities around them. Mark raised an eyebrow, a smirk hinting at the corners of his mouth. Possibilities? Really? This feels more like a midlife crisis than a culinary renaissance. James tightened his grip on the chalk, feeling the rough surface beneath his fingers. Inside, a simmering fire began to rise, urging him forward. He wasn't merely stepping into a kitchen, he was stepping into an identity, one that defended its authenticity against the tides of others' perceptions. Someone needs to breathe fresh air into this place, he continued, a growing fire pushing him now. And if that someone is me, then so be it. You think you know what I can do? Just watch. With that, he turned toward the blackboard once more, scratching out the beginnings of a dish, fingers moving without hesitation. A quiet applause burst forth as a group of co-workers gathered, intrigued by the energy now radiating from him. Engaging laughter floated around them, a remedy for his earlier tension, but James's focus was laser-sharp. It was exhilarating to break the confines of self-doubt, a sensation that drove him forward with renewed zest. Gathering his thoughts, he jotted down ideas: sliders infused with local spices that mirrored the lives of his regulars, a special pie that captured the essence of the diner, and even a twist on a childhood favorite that stirred nostalgia in the hearts of those who wandered through the doors. Each entry felt like a step out of the shadow of his previous life, a reclaiming of agency and influence in this makeshift family's narrative. Wow, James. That's amazing. Lisa's genuine excitement met him again, cutting through the lingering presence of Mark's insult. Customers are going to love this. Feeling buoyed, he shrugged off the doubt that had been yet another weight on his shoulders. He was in a different arena now. The chaos of the diner began to marry beautifully with his ideas, becoming a living archive of aesthetics and experiences that held meaning. Each dish felt like a piece of art, a desire to connect, to innovate. Just as he started to see everything take shape, Mark interjected, his tone dripping with false sincerity. You really think people will embrace this? The old-timers are set in their ways. Hope you're ready for some backlash, chef. That comment pierced through the moments of joy, anchoring a reminder of the fears bubbling within him. What if the regulars didn't accept his changes? Thoughts of resigning to safe dishes began creeping back, flickering like shadows in his resolve. James opened his mouth to respond but paused. How could he turn this moment into something that illuminated the strength of his commitment instead of letting it bury him under cloying doubt? He remembered Mia's encouragement to embrace the chaos. I'm not afraid to try. Change is part of life, whether they like it or not, James finally replied, taking a stand. The words tasted stronger, more significant than they had before. Outdated traditions can evolve, Mark. That's not a bad thing. Mark studied him, skepticism still clouding his gaze, but James could sense the slightest hint of respect forming. Maybe Mark was prepared to underestimate him again, but this time it felt like the stakes were higher. At that moment, James realized he could not let himself be defined by disconnected memories of past failures. Or by someone else's expectations. He was not here to rewrite someone else's story, he was here to write his own, one dish at a time. That he shared his ideas freely with the group surrounding him, and for the first time, he felt like their investment mattered not as a means to reclaim his past, but to shape their future. The experience buoyed him, revealing more to himself than he had previously thought possible. Just as laughter and excitement filled the air, an unexpected call echoed from the front of the diner, the unmistakable higher pitch of a food critic's voice. And with it, the anticipation knotted in the pit of James's stomach. He felt adrenaline rush through him, an electric reminder of the stakes. They were about to serve the critic an entirely new menu, a gamble that could either snuff out James's budding flame or ignite it into something beyond his wildest dreams. His upcoming decisions would define everything. Would he stand his ground and resist the pressure, or would he fall victim to his fears once again? The threshold had opened wider than expected. He could hear the ticking clock. This was his chance to dive deeper. What awaited him in the face of so much uncertainty? With each passing moment, the chatter in the diner grew more electric, the anticipation hanging thick like the steam curling from the kitchen. James could feel the temperature rise, but instead of succumbing to the heat, he thrived in it. The plates stacked high with his inspired creations seemed to pulse with potential. He glanced at the clock again, time was slipping by, and soon the critic would be seated. The laughter and applause from his co-workers faded into a steady hum in the background, his mind shifting gears into overdrive. This was not only about cooking anymore, it was about an opportunity to emerge from the shadows. The weight of Mark's earlier words still lingered, yet they now served as fuel rather than chains. Okay, team, let us bring it home, James said, rallying his group with newfound vigor. We're not just making food, we're sharing stories through our dishes. Every plate tells our tale, and now it's time to capture the critic's attention. They nodded, enthusiasm brewing in their eyes. For the first time in a long time, James felt like a leader, not just a participant, and that realization ignited a fire within him. He directed his team methodically, keeping them focused and charged as they transitioned from preparation to the actual execution of an entirely new menu. Each item brought a new challenge, each challenge tempted him to retreat to safer choices. But he pushed against that instinct, fighting back against the creeping doubts. As the orders started coming in, James moved instinctively from station to station, ensuring the flavors matched his vision. He flitted between the fryer and the grill, his heart racing but his hands steady, a synchronicity he hadn't felt before. There was no room for uncertainty, he led with confidence, something he had lacked, yet now found strangely comfortable. More spice in the sliders. He called out, watching as his team responded without hesitation. Let us optimize that zing. It's the centerpiece of this dish. Satisfaction surged within him as he noticed the shifts in the kitchen's energy, the way they rallied around each other. They were moving as a cohesive unit, echoing not just his creativity but amplifying it collectively. But amidst the thrill of the rush, doubts clawed at the back of his mind. What if the critic detested his vision? He couldn't bear the thought of rejection spinning him back into that familiar pit of self-doubt. Digging deeper, he recalled Mia's words about perseverance, the necessity of pushing boundaries and embracing discomfort. Then, as if to add another layer of tension, Mark's voice broke through the din. They might eat your dishes, but do they appreciate the risks? He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching with skeptical eyes. Let me worry about that, James replied, keeping his tone even, determined not to let Mark's jibe derail him. As orders went out, time felt both swift and sluggish. He caught glimpses of the critic and their table through the busy din, nervous laughter, scribbled notes, and calculated observations. Each tick of the clock whispered reminders of everything at stake, his journey forward, his right to assert his growth, the opportunity to prove himself, stunted by others' convictions. Then, with a deep breath, he plated the final touches on the critic's dish. This was at the moment to encapsulate the journey he had undertaken, not just for the food itself, but for the reclamation of his identity. As the dish left his station, his heart raced, and the quiet dread coiled tightly. Would it embody the evolution he had fought for? An unexpected realization gripped him. This wasn't solely about the food they were tasting, it was about a statement of who he had become through each painstaking effort and confrontational exchange. The critic lifted a fork, eyes narrowing as they took the first bite. James held his breath, suspended in time. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the table. Was it delight? A gasp followed a reaction he couldn't decipher. Everything hinged on this moment. The tension was palpable, a flickering fire of uncertainty and determination. Would this be the turning point he craved, or another reminder of the barriers he needed to overcome? And as he stood there, teetering on the edge, he could only prepare himself for the response that could either validate his courage or sink him further into doubt. In the blink of an eye, the critic turned to the room and called for attention. The tension thickened as they prepared to share the verdict that could change everything. The critic's voice boomed across the diner, commanding silence from the bustling patrons. Every eye turned, each heart beat in unison with an electric anticipation. James felt the walls of the diner constrict around him, the air thick with nervous energy. As he stood frozen in place, he could barely recall what he had plated just moments ago. There are moments in dining that transcend what we typically expect from a meal, the critic began, their voice steady, yet laced with an undeniable weight. James's mind raced. This was it. What path would the words take? Tonight, I experienced such a moment. A mix of relief and apprehension swelled within him, and suddenly, the words spiraled off the critic's tongue like a carefully crafted dish, poignant and rich in metaphor. James's hands clenched and then relaxed, eager to absorb the verdict. The critic continued, diving into a detailed analysis of each dish. James's passion poured into these creations was laid bare, careful consideration of each flavor, the interplay of textures, and a narrative behind each choice. But what struck him most was the mention of risks. The critic acknowledged the courage it took to deviate from the norm. It felt like a validation, but it also opened a floodgate of introspective questions. Had he really risked enough? As the words cascaded throughout the diner, James felt a shadow rolling in Mark's earlier critique haunting him still. The critic praised the innovation but questioned whether the dishes truly resonated or were mere distractions from the usual diner fare. A sense of dread crept in. Did he push boundaries to the extent needed, or was he still playing it safe? In the midst of this evaluation, he caught Mia's gaze across the room. There was a warmth there, an encouragement that urged him to remember his true motivation, the desire to create experiences rather than just meals. The critic concluded their review, a breath of finality hanging in the air as they commended him, yet with an admonition of potential still unrealized. James didn't comprehend the applause at first. He stood, battling his inner turmoil. They appreciated his work, yet he felt the remnants of self-doubt lingering like smoke. It would be easy to bask in the praise, to allow it to fill the gaps of insecurity, but he knew better. He had to confront this perceived validation head-on. "Great job tonight," Mia said, sidling up next to him, her smile both warm and keen. "But I could see it in your eyes. You're not satisfied yet, are you?" Before he could respond, Mark interjected, "You think this moment will change everything?" You have to dig deeper, expand your horizons. The dishes were good as good enough. His tone was laced with challenge. With that, James felt a spark ignite within him. Was he only halfway there? A realization struck. The critic had pointed out he still held back. While he strived for creativity, that assurance lingered, a desire to please versus a commitment to authenticity. He could light the path ahead instead of merely taking the expected route. What if I pushed even further? He murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The thought alone sent shivers down his spine. This wasn't merely about refining techniques or enhancing flavors. This was about an intentional journey to uncover the depths of his culinary identity. Mia leaned closer, intrigued. What do you mean? The critics think I played it safe. Maybe I should take bigger risks, share parts of myself we haven't explored yet. He surveyed the diner, its familiar corners, the diners who casually consumed without a thought. This was his arena, but did it reflect who he truly was? What if I cook with inspired intention, infusing pieces of my journey, my struggles, my truths into the menu? The question waded through newfound clarity, each word weaving a narrative of ambition. What's the next step? Mia's excitement was infectious, but as James plotted his next move, a wave of uncertainty lingered. Engaging in this risk meant shedding remnants of comfort, confronting the fear of failure. Would his team follow him into uncharted territory? The true test loomed before him. The moment of truth was dawning, but only if he had the courage to face it fully illuminated. As James's mind raced through possibilities, he could feel momentum building again, but this time, it wouldn't just be about achieving a moment. It was about evolving with purpose, and as that determination coursed through him, another thought emerged, an unexpected question. What did it truly mean to create a dish that was a reflection of oneself? Would this journey reveal not only his culinary genius but an unraveling of his very core? Each step ahead cast long shadows of doubt, but amid that darkness, a guiding light began to form, showing him where his unexplored passion lay ahead beyond comfort, confronting his fears. Would he take that leap? As the evening unfolded, James could feel the winds of change rustling around him. The next chapter awaited, and it housed both uncertainty and the possibility of incredible growth. The horizon beckoned. Would he dare to reach for it? James stood at the counter of Betty's diner, his heart racing as he absorbed the whirlwind of emotions that had unfolded over the last few weeks. The critic's words echoed in his mind, and he felt the weight of their assessment. It was time for a concrete shift, not just in his cooking but in the heart of the diner itself. The old ways of serving just food were over. This diner was a microcosm of experiences waiting to be shared. He had spent too long confined to the perceptions of his past self, bouncing financial spreadsheets around in sterile boardrooms, far removed from the vibrant tapestry of stories each patron brought through the door. Now, he felt an undeniable urgency to redefine the diner, to morph beyond mere sustenance into a genuine hub of connection and community. It was a leap forward into vulnerability, yet he had never felt more sure of where he was headed. "Lisa," he called, and she turned, the familiar spark of her enthusiasm igniting the air between them. "We're ready to dive into something new. Let's craft a special event that intertwines food with the stories of this community. What do you have in mind?" She responded, her brow furrowing in curiosity, yet anticipation glimmered in her eyes. "I want to bring the soul of our diner to the forefront. Every dish we serve should honor the regulars, their memories, their struggles, their laughter. We can highlight a story night where each table shares their favorite meal, memories associated with a dish we serve. Imagine how we can connect their pasts to our culinary creations." Ideas spilled from his lips, each one more invigorating than the last. "James, that could really resonate with everyone," Lisa exclaimed, her voice filled with a mix of skepticism and excitement. "But it means you'll have to commit to more than just food." "Absolutely," he replied, nodding fervently, the tension of doubt dissipating with each shared vision. "It means fostering connections, breaking bread with the community while ensuring every bite tells a story. This will redefine our relationship with our customers." And that was at the touchstone moment that shifted everything. His focus was no longer on mere profitability or reputation. It wrapped itself around the pulse of togetherness he felt each day at the diner, the support woven within conversations and laughter. He was committed to creating an experience where vulnerability thrived, where everyone felt seen. That night, he jumped into action, gathering staff around for a brainstorming session. Together, they expanded upon the idea, throwing out dishes inspired by regulars, infusing personal anecdotes into the menu. Sally's spicy pie became a centerpiece dish, complemented by the story of a moment shared at the diner that had bonded her and Lisa. Within weeks, anticipation built, each staff member embracing their unique roles. Mia was excited about crafting homemade signs, Lisa dove into organizing the storytelling aspect, and James adapted recipes into living narratives. The night arrived, bustling with chatter and warmth, an atmosphere alive with eagerness. As patrons settled into their seats, James felt an electric charge in the air. He noticed a few familiar faces from the past, ones who had once regarded him with skepticism now seated, eager to see how their stories would be honored. Moments unfolded as dishes glided from the kitchen, accompanied by tales shared with trembling, proud voices. Laughter erupted as memories of heartache and triumph seeped into every spoonful. James watched as faces lit up, emotion seeped deep into those fleeting interactions. When the final dish was served, a heartfelt creation stemming from his own vulnerable childhood experiences, he took a moment to step back, eyes scanning the packed diner. It was no longer just a diner, it was a tapestry of voices intertwined with flavors and global narratives uniting strangers. "James!" Lisa called, her energy radiating through the room. "Look!" He turned as the critic, again present but this time seated at a table directly across from him, raised their glass to him, bringing a sense of recognition that transcended the mere delivery of food. They smiled, nodding in approval, eyes scanning the restaurant, taking in the essence of the transformative experience that had taken shape. In that instant, a breakthrough crystallized within him. He knew he had conquered the interior struggle, the fear of being perceived as authentic, of being dismissed, and most importantly, of inadequacy. The event had solidified his newfound self. He was not merely a billionaire masquerading as a creative chef. He had become a conduit for connection, a person intertwined with those around him. As the evening unfolded, applause erupted spontaneously. The warmth that filled the diner was overwhelming, tangible proof of mutual appreciation flourishing among them. No longer was he defined by his wealth or former corporate accolades, instead, he embodied the vigor found only in shared moments and community spirit. He achieved a level of personal fulfillment that had eluded him for years, finally understanding that success stemmed not from singular accolades but from relational richness. The smiles reflected in the eyes of regulars, the laughter mingling with the scent of freshly baked pie, they validated his journey. It wasn't merely a diner anymore, it was home, woven from the stories of those who had both come and gone. As the sun set beyond the diner, painting streaks of orange and pink across the sky, James embraced the moments of his metamorphosis with solid confidence. He had ultimately proven to himself and to them the merits of going beyond superficial validation. This was the birth of something greater, and he stood ready to embrace every new challenge head-on. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.